In chapter 3, we were reminded of this word, yajna. Krishna said the entire universe is a yajna. And then you say, what do you mean by this? Because it's an important statement. If the entire universe is a yajna, then I better understand what yajna means, because it will help me to relate to this universe better. If the Lord says the entire universe is this, then I don't just let it go. I want to investigate. What do you mean by this? And he says that the entire universe is made in such a way that anything that is able to move or think or respond to the environment is made not just to do it for itself, but it's made to do it for the benefit of some other species. And so he says that everything in the universe is made in such a way that we are, by definition, made to contribute to everything else around us. Nature contributes to nature. Animals contribute to animals. Insects, bacteria contributes to other bacteria, right? Bacteria feeds off other larger bacteria. Other larger bacteria feeds off, larger organisms and so on. So there's nothing in this universe really that you can find that is out of place, that is living on its own without having some purpose to something else. It has a purpose to something else. It has a connection to something else. We may not have recognized that connection, but it's there. So in chapter 3, when the Lord says the entire universe is a yajna, this word yajna, it can be interpreted as a sacrifice, but not in a negative connotation, but in a connotation where I'm giving my effort, my resources to you, and you are giving your resources to me. So even now during the classroom, right, it's never a one-way street. It's always a two-way. There's no teacher without a student, and there's no student without a teacher. So if you really look at it like this, then no one really here has any superiority or right over somebody else. It's really just one big, very well-made, complex system. And everyone in that system in some way will, offer you, a way to make it through this life, and you will vice versa do for them. So if we look at those people such as, sanitation workers or those that often there's a societal bias towards them, actually, those are the very people that make you have a comfortable home and, have a place where you can sit down in peace and do what you want to do. So if you really look at the universe like this, there is actually no lower being in this universe. That is only our own biases or prejudices, because we're kind of, indoctrinated like this. We said, you're not good enough, you're this person, you're like that, right? You come from this background. And so this becomes a narrative in our head. But now when Krishna says the entire universe is a yajna, that means there's not one being, you included, who is not outside the universe. And then you say, what is this yajna? It means a place where every being contributes to the well-being of somebody else. So this is huge. So just to recognize this alone makes you rethink, what is my place in this universe? How do I now start to reorient myself and rethink as to how I conduct myself in this universe? So now that's where chapter 4, yajna, completes the equation. He says, if chapter 3 is about that recognition, the acknowledgement of the fact that is the interconnected web, now the question comes, what will I do with that, right? Otherwise, it's just knowledge. It's just, I heard it in chapter 3, but how do I act it through? So at chapter 4, the word yajna changes the definition, or should we say improves on the definition. Now it's no longer just a sacrifice, it's also a means of spiritual conduct, a means of action, but not just any action, an action that actually contributes back and thinks about the well-being and the impact of my actions in reference to your life, in reference to the life of others. So this makes you a lot more conscious, deliberate, and thoughtful, knowing now that you really have no choice but to start to look at it in a way that it's always been like that. In fact, you and I are here because of all of the sacrifices that our great-great-grandparents have done before us. And they had it much harder than we did today. They didn't have knowledge, so much availability, or they didn't have the road systems. There was dirt. We had to walk, miles and miles just to go shopping. So today we have it very, very simple. And it's thus much easier today to forget this just by the mere fact of convenience. You don't have to take responsibility anymore as we used to. right? One can do something and they can get away with it, and they're not going to be punished as, or scrutinized publicly as we used to. So if you look at the younger generation, what you observe is there's a certain kind of a decline in what we call, most important word, responsibility. See, in our generation, there was a certain responsibility that you had to attend to. There was a certain kind of a hardship that you had to undergo and see the life of hardship very early on. I visited my family in, was it Croatia? Yeah, it was in Croatia because they're all over the place. And one of the kids there was 13 years old, 13, 1-3. I tell you, this kid was more mature than a common Australian or Western or American of 40 years old. I said, like, why is this? What makes you, why are you generally, because we live on a farm, so it's a very kind of a farmish place. Everyone's got their own farm, a little forest, cows, you got a tractor, wake up early. So you're a real hard worker. So I observed all of these patterns and I realized this is because your life is one of responsibility. There are things you need to do, and there's no way around it because that's just how the society or the whole village is made to be. And so today, when you're born in the city area where you don't have to do anything but be offered on a silver platter, and especially if you're a daughter, then you always get protected, and as if you're a boy, then you get told to be responsible. So now daughters get protected, and I said, it's okay, it's okay, and there's nothing to worry about. And so the daughter learns very quickly that I don't have to take accountability. So if you look at the younger generation of women today, it is lacking a sense of responsibility. They can get away with it because there's always another beta guy to open up the wallet and then bring them in and say, it's okay, just come into, you're a pretty face, I'm going to take care of you. So the woman never really takes the chance to reflect back on her responsible or irresponsible actions. And so women like this, they continue going through this generation with a sense of irresponsibility. Same thing with men. Men, right? They don't have to work as hard anymore as they used to. So they don't learn a sense of that teamwork or cooperation or what it means to really go through the man stuff, right? The manly works, the waking up early and working hard and taking responsibility and taking care of a larger group of people. So this is lacking, and thus all of this collectively takes away this connection to the universe, that I don't have to do anything, that I can just be a consumer. I can just sort of walk and just, do my days day by day without much kind of attendance, just wing it, right? Like that. So thereby, this principle is eternal. There will never be a time when the universe is not a yajna. And so what Krishna is saying is, when you see that you're a participant here, you cannot ever really have it your way because it is not beneficial for you. So you're not trying to appease some Krishna or some Lord over there. You're really just understanding, I have no choice because that's how the universe is made. If I choose to be a consumer and not attend to my duties and not take accountability and responsibility and ask the questions, what could have I done differently and what went wrong and what will I do next time? Then it's just going to create this narrative of the mind, which down the road is going to result in a very uncomfortable state of mind.
It's just something I wanted to ask, right? You said it's about daughter and son. Did you think it's also a responsibility of the parent to teach? I'm the only child, I'm the daughter, but I was taught differently. It's you're alone, you have to stand up for yourself, go get your stuff done, etc. So I think it's also background, right? The way your parents teach you what they teach you.
It is absolutely. So last session, some sessions ago, you also said it's one prarabdha karma, the collectivity of where you're born, who your parents are, because obviously what you've done in the previous, right, lives, and the environment makes a huge difference to whether you live on an island, whether you live in a city or a village. All of that collectively will determine those small nuances on top of the cultural normalities, right? The cultural normality goes through time. But on top of that cultural normality, or you can say cultural karma, the karmic of all beings, right? They're born in a city and everyone in the city has a certain vibe. So you carry that vibe. But along with that vibe, also there is your own parents, where they're from, how they were raised, what generations they came from, and what friends you decided to, hang out with, or you were hanging out with. So all of that will ultimately determine the outcome. But if you look at the general timeline, right, of, for example, India, very simple example. Anyone that speak to someone in India, it's always the same story. India 40 years ago was so different than it is today. Now, I don't even have to ask the question in what way. It's very simple. It's basically Americanized. So you can see what happens to a certain time when I start to lose connection with my sense of contribution. And all I do is I just look around to what gets me attention, what gets me validation. And then that becomes my new norm. And since everyone else is now doing it and getting the attention, and I'm not, I have no choice but to do the same thing. The only way you can really thrive and survive and continue a proper life in this universe is by acknowledgement. You are a giver, you're not a consumer. When you're a giver, people automatically give back to you. When you're a consumer, then people want to, right? Generally, they see that and they start to consume. So it becomes this tit for tat, right? A little bit of me, I take from you, you take from me. But when you see that you're a giver, and whether others want to give or not, that's none of my business. I am a giver. And giver doesn't mean where you're like a doormat. People just use you. They just, and you just say yes, yes, yes. This is not about being a nice person. It's just knowing who you are as a contributor in the universe. Thereby, Krishna then further says, he says, although they are crucial for your evolution and development, in 4.33 that we've done last week, he says the discipline of knowledge is superior to yajna. He's not saying now go and get rid of yajna. He's saying something else. He's saying that yajna can help you to a degree. It can pull you out. It can make you more discerning and more likable and more, with the environment. And at the same time, all the practices and being a giver, lifetime after lifetime, it will not solve your fundamental problem. It will not solve your problem of, or situation or challenge, or call it whatever you want, of looking for a sense of completion in this vast, complex universe. Because there are, number one, countless of causes that are always obstructing your success in an action. So this means even if you're a very dharmic person and you intend the best that you can, even then you don't guarantee, or there's no guarantee of best results in your life because of the various causes that can intercept and sort of remove that, that benefit that you were expecting. You have little control of these events that are always intercepting between what you want and what, right, you're expected to get. There's always some interception in between, and you don't control that. So now to spend all my time trying to control all these individuals in between, that becomes a very painful and very, time-consuming event. So the first thing is, the universe is too big for you to have total control, even if you do the best possible actions. Secondly, even if you evolve, when are you not connected to others who you depend on or who are close to you? There's probably never a time when you're not connected to someone. So what happens often is you evolve, but those around you are not evolving. And that itself becomes another challenge. So look at this. I use an action to help myself, and that very action caused conflict with somebody else who's not at my pace. So now a good event ended up bring up another problem in your life because you want to grow, but the person you're with is pulling you back. So what do? Right? So now you have to deal with that thing. Furthermore, when you refine your mind, you will find that there are always surprises in life. And those surprises are beyond your control. Even the Pandavas, who were very evolved and very well intended in their thinking, who was that one person in their life because of which they couldn't just enjoy themselves and have a smooth ride in this world. Duryodhana, just one person is all it takes to make your life very hard in overall. Even if the Pandavas were doing well-intended actions and they were full of yajnas in their life. So Krishna thereby says, yajnas, no matter how well-intended they are, or even as a spiritual practice, because now spiritual practice is chapter 4, yajna, a spiritual practice or a ritual where you do have to take your time out to get the result. So even then, no practice guarantees moksha. Because moksha is gaining the limitless, infinite. But every action by its nature is going to be time-bound. So anything that is time-bound cannot give me an eternal result because it has a certain kind of duration of 10 hours, and so I'm only going to get 10 hours of benefits. If I do a 5-hour action, I'm going to get a 5-hour benefit. So if you look at, for example, Ratnakar or Valmiki, how was Valmiki, the Ramayana author, how was he when before he became Valmiki?
He was a thief.
He was a thief. What else? Keep going.
He was in the forest. He was killing people. He was killing people and stealing the wealth, everything.
All right. So he was a narcissist. He was a murderer. He was a thief. He was a cheat. He was a manipulator. He was a liar. Let it out, right? So this man, he came across Narada. And what happened to this so-called sinner? What happened to him? He had a 360 or 180 degree shift, complete shift. Whereas now you take Ravana. Where is Ravana here? We're not talking about you. Okay. We take Ravana, and how was he? He was a great scholar. He was a devotee of Shiva. He was doing a lot of yajnas and tapas and practices. He's the kind of man that you would worship him, right? You would say, I bow to you. You're amazing. Before he, obviously went sideways. And what happened to him? He took the path of destruction. Interesting. So can you really guarantee a linear and certain progress upwards? No, you can't. Even if a person is well-informed, well-intended, and they are, they're a scholar, they're a worshiper, they pray, something can still happen and it can take you sideways. Whereas somebody else who you would not pay any attention to, you would say, what, you have no chance. You have no chance. You're just, next life. That person will surprise you a lot. You never know. So the question then is, when does it all end? Right? When does this journey of constant yajnas end? And what Krishna says is, it's not more refinement in the same paradigm, because more refinement in the same paradigm will give you more limitations. So you have to change the paradigm entirely to come out of this entire tree of cause and effects. And what he says is, it's like waking from a dream, right? When you awake from the dream, all of those limitations that were attached to the dream person and the emotions that were, that the person was going through, all of the hardships, that all in one instant gets swallowed by the waker. That means all those things that you were going through genuinely in the dream, in one instant collapses from the standpoint of the waker. What do you mean by a paradigm shift, right? What that means is I have to recognize or own up. Now, the word own up really just means I have to be sold to the idea. And how long does it take you to get sold to an idea? Overnight. When someone's trying to convince you and they know that the product is good for you, but you cannot see that yet. And they know, they've already dealt with millions of people, right? They, it's the same objections, it's the same doubts, it's the same story, it's the same, process. And then you come along and you say the same doubts, the same objection, and they're like, oh my God, here we go again, right? Now I have to go through the same sales process to slowly convince you that this is good for you. So what I have to do, what my mind has to do, is has to own up that I am not inside this jiva, body and mind. That's what paradigm shift means. I am not inside this jiva. Rather, this jiva is inside me. It's like this cup in the space in the cup. The space in the cup is not inside the cup. That space is all pervading, all accommodating space. That is a paradigm shift. So this means that right now it seems like, right, you're sort of this person inside, a small person who is, living inside your body that's listening to me right now. But actually, who you really are is all pervasive. There's no ending to it. It's boundless. And what is that boundless that you are? It is the very consciousness that we all have, that we all, not that we have, but that we are. And that consciousness is not localized just to you. It is all pervading. And one body just happens to be in that consciousness, which is your body. Now, I just want to put a little disclaimer. It's not like your body is in consciousness, but rather there's only consciousness, right? So we just use a little bit of semantics here initially. You cannot really say that the pot is inside the clay, but rather the clay pervades the entirety of the pot. So we cancel that in, and then we bring you a different example. And then we say, like a pot, there's no in or out. Wherever there is a pot, wherever there's your thought or brain or body or concern, that's exactly where you will find consciousness. That's why you say, I'm concerned. How do you know you're concerned? Because consciousness was there lighting up that thought to say, I'm concerned. So thereby, I'll give you another analogy of this paradigm shift. Suppose that you are a wave in the ocean, and there are, of course, many waves, and you're just wearing, you as the water, are wearing one wave for a moment, for a time given. And this wave that you're wearing, as though wearing, see, water's not really wearing a wave, but so it's as though wearing, is conditioned by its past causes, by its environment, like Soma just said, by the parents, by what we call your samskaras. Now, what are samskaras, by the way? The question is this: what is a samskara or a vasana? What do you understand by samskara or vasana? The reason I'm asking this is because those samskaras or vasanas make you who you are as a person. So what is a samskara or a vasana?
Vasana is an innate tendency of a human being.
Okay, good. So it's a tendency that we have. But I want to be more descriptive than that. Like, we know it's a tendency, but what do you mean by a tendency?
It's the instinctive behavior of a person,
okay,
or
good.
a reaction.
Good. And how does an instinctive behavior of a person or their reaction, how does that form?
It gets formed over the years. That becomes an instinctive thing. I mean, as per the Indian scriptures, it's built over many lifetimes.
What I was trying to say that vasanas and sanskaras are the final result of your deeds.
The final result of your deeds.
Or final effect of your deeds on your personality or your life.
Okay.
Your activities.
Okay. They are an effect. They're impressions formed. In other words, they're effects as a result of my doing in the past.
Yeah.
Okay, good. Archana?
For me, I think samskaras are like our memory imprints from the past actions. While when we talk about the vasanas are kind of active behavioral tendencies or desires which are sprouting from whatever accumulated from our past imprints.
Yeah, good. Now I know the difference. Sometimes in Chinmaya school, they will put a difference between samskara and vasana. In the Dayananda school, they're synonymous. So for now, I'll just say that they're synonymous words, vasana, because they just mean impressions, basically.
That's right.
So, and I'll stick with what Archana said. So let me give an example how a samskara that gets carried over for lifetimes gets formed. Suppose that you get into a relationship and you trust the person that you're with. So you think they're very loyal to you. And you discover very soon that they are cheating on you. They were doing something behind your back and they were not honest with you. So now you discover that and you form a distrust towards the opposite sex. So that distrust is there. That means the scar is there. It's formed as a result of something has happened in my life. Now you break off and then you go into a next relationship. And then the other person says, why don't you ever trust me? You know, you always have to look around what I'm doing. You're always checking what I'm doing. Can you just not trust what I do? And then you honestly say, I understand. I know it's a little bit harder than you, but in my last relationship, my partner cheated on me, and it's just bothering me. I don't know. I can't let it go. And then your partner understands and says, okay, well, I hope this, slowly goes away in time. But suppose now she asked you or he asked you, why can you never trust me? You're always looking around my back, you always have to check up what I'm doing. And you say, I don't know, I don't remember. I mean, I don't know. That's just how I am. That's just how I am. In other words, look at this. A memory, just because the images of a memory have faded out through the years, it doesn't mean that the scar is gone. You may forget the image, the event that took place, but the scar is there. That scar that you cannot explain, but you know it's there and it's bothering and it's producing a certain kind of a friction in the world, that is called a samskara. That is what gets taken forward in every life. That is why some kids will just have friction and they will become troublemakers. That's called friction. And you don't know why. Because of all those things that I don't remember, which have occurred at some point or the other. So the collective of that, the wave carries. So now suppose one of those samskaras is a wave attached to the big wave. You're a wave, and there's like all these little wave globules over your head, little balls. Samskara number 1 wave, samskara number 2 wave, samskara number 3 wave, samskara number 4 wave, and you're a big wave, okay? So now, what is the truth of every samskara, every wave? The big wave and the small wave. It is the water. So this means when you realize that that even my so-called samskara is just mithya, the dependence, it depends on awareness or consciousness. The wave, the person, Andre, is one big mithya, which depends on satyam. All of the things, the conditionings, the little balls attached to the wave are also made of that same water. Then at once, all those samskaras no longer have any effect on you because you see right through them. They're not samskaras, they're just appearances of one reality. There's no such thing as so-called samskara or prarabdha karma or body or mind. They're just appearances, mithya appearances of this one reality. So now, knowing this at once, you can no longer, once the wave falls, get born as one more form. Why? Because your identity has shifted from being as good as a wave with balls of samskaras attached to it, which always demand a new wave to be born to keep on experiencing the deeds of its past actions. You can no longer be born as a new wave. Why? Because your identity is in the water, as the water. So now how can you be born as the wave? When your understanding of I is the water. So this means it's not possible to come back as another wave because there is no such thing as a wave. That's what you've understood. But until you understand that, you keep on existing as another wave, and a wave always comes with balls of samskaras attached around its face. That's what sculpts your face, by the way, balls of samskaras. Thereby, the moment you realize that there's nothing here, then awareness, like the wave realizing there's nothing but the water, at once, your identity is now free of all those things that are supposed to be headed your way, because there is no you individual anymore. You are the whole thing. So therefore, you cannot ever return as one particular thing, because you are the whole thing. And thereby, you are now freed from this continuous, right, what we call samsara, birth and death.
Can I just ask, Andre, observationally in my own life, that I've noticed as I try and settle into this paradigm shift, knowing the Satya-Mithya relationship of the jiva, that the samskaras become more evident. Like, it's like I have to analyze them more, like, why am I insecure, or why am I a people pleaser, or why do I react that way? So there's like a sort of more of a filter or more of a myopic view on it. So it's like maybe like if you were trying to give up smoking, all you can think about is cigarettes. I feel like that as I see the samskara, they like come to me and I feel emotional about it, and I find that they become stronger before hopefully they dissipate. Is that a normal course? Is that, because I'm hoping that one day I'll wake up and realize that I'm just the water and everything will be good, but it seems quite an emotional push and pull with various things inside of me, that you can be like making a cup of tea and you want to cry about something that you've not thought about. I don't know whether that's normal. Have you got anything to say about that?
It's interesting. Does someone want to say something about that?
I think it's due to focusing on these. Well, it's nididhyasana, isn't it? You're focusing on the information that we're learning in the class, and then you're thinking about it outside of the class. You're applying it to all these events. So it is just reflection on the knowledge, I think. And after, you just sort of drop it eventually.
You do drop it eventually.
And realize the importance of it is not really, it's not really important.
Yeah.
It's part of the process, I think. It's natural.
It was Swami Paramarthananda. He said, look at your papams as good. Now, how do I look at my papams as a good thing? Because there's just exhaustion. That means I rather exhaust my papams right now than in the future. So I cheer it. And look at your punyam as just the end, coming to the end of that process too. So neither are worthy of being cheered or bad or good, because papam, if you look at it differently, is just emptying out all the pains that you're going to receive anyway in the future. And punyam, there's nothing to be cheerful about that too, because that's just the exhaustion of punyam in your life. Even if you look at the good things in your life, what's so good about it? If you look at it from a different standpoint, right? So in other words, it's just basically telling me, oh, okay, so I'm just going to be happy now, but it's really just saying, enjoy it while you can, because I'm definitely going to, not be there in a couple of days. It's like, okay, well, from that standpoint, live throughout that too. No differently than bad things. In fact, bad things actually can make you even happier, because you're like, oh, great. The bad thing is only my roadway to something better. So depends on how you look at it. So I'm not saying something's wrong or right with it. That's not the question here. The question is, how do I look at what's happening in my life? That's the only real control you have. So when does it all end? That's the question going back. When does it all end? The buddhi has to see itself as the kartatva. Stage of ignorance, when I don't know my nature, that buddhi, that intellect, sees itself as I. But stage of knowledge, that same buddhi knows it's mithya, it's a kartatva, it's a dur, it's a sense of doership. So the sense of doership is born by the mechanism given to you for a while, like a little mechanism given to that wave. It's meant to experience decision-making or feel like it's doing something or deciding. It's a mechanism. So that mechanism that makes you feel like you're choosing or deciding, that mechanism is, you're free of that mechanism. So for instance, we all chose to sit down here and listen, right? Who chose that? The buddhi chose that. Awareness didn't choose anything. Awareness is just awareness, illumining the whole show like a screen, like, the light on a big stage of drama. And drama happens here and there. Everyone's, deciding, doing what, but the light is just like witnessing the whole show.
It's the free will, right?
Yeah, so by the given capacity of free will, there was a choice made by the buddhi, which gives a sense of kartatva, and thereby we are now sitting here. Now the mistake becomes when you say, I chose to listen. You didn't choose, the buddhi chose. But Krishna then answers, what do you mean by, because he says in verse 33, chapter 4, he says, actions are swallowed by knowledge. So now what do you mean by that? So does that mean that moksha swallows your actions? Did your actions end when moksha takes place? Not at all. So that's ruled out, because the body continues doing, the buddhi continues thinking. But the kartatva, which means the sense of doership, that is falsified. Because, as we said, going back to the wave is made to do according to its conditioning as samskaras and impressions. But wherever there's a wave, the water is there. So it's not really water that's deciding. It's from the standpoint of the wave, there's a decision and there's an action. So thereby, Krishna says, that conviction that you have that I am the doer, that goes away. That's moksha. Now, the second understanding of this statement, actions are swallowed by knowledge, is if you imagine a dice, which has 4 sides to it, and 1, 2, and 3, and there's a special number 4. Now, 1, 2, and 3 gives you something, right? If you get number 1 on the dice, you will get a house. If you get number 2, you will get 200 years of life. If you get number 3, you will get a great memory. So they're all good, right? 1, 2, or 3. But number 4 gives you all of them and much more. So what does number 4 do? When you get number 4, it swallows all of those benefits at once. You get all those benefits at once and much more. There's no number 5. You can't get higher than that. So therefore, when he says all of them get swallowed by knowledge, it's like what you really are looking for is that winning throw, which will give you all the benefits of 1, 2, and 3, even though they all provide something, but not everything, and much, much more. Why? Because you're shifting an entire paradigm shift from the dreamer who was limited, who was in pain, into the waker who's free of the dreamer's perturbations and limitations and so on. So thereby, at once, you free yourself from the limitations of the jiva. That is called a paradigm shift. Now, verse 34, how does one gain this knowledge? Tadvidhi pranipatena pariprashnena sevaya upadekshanti te jnanam jnani nastatva darshinaha.
Understand that which is to be known by prostrating the wise, by asking proper questions, and by serving them. Those wise persons who have the vision of the truth will teach you this knowledge.
Thank you, Meenakshi. So let's look at your sense organs. Your sense organs are designed to perceive gross stuff, and they cannot really go beyond gross stuff. So either way, the senses are only limited to see a certain range of experiences. However, what is beyond them is beyond them. So what's beyond them is this final reality. And furthermore, as you go through this world, you discover your intellect starts to be a lot more suspicious of gaps in teachings. It's no longer satisfied with partial teachings. So not only is the senses become sharpened, but your intellect, by the mere virtue of experience, starts to see gaps in incomplete teachings. So it says, this is not good enough. This doesn't add up. You've had that experience? This doesn't add up, right? There's something missing. It says incomplete, right? So like this, you start to then further ask the right kind of questions, such as, and the question is, so on one hand, I have a jiva. That's what Vedanta says. There is a jiva, beginningless jiva. On the other hand, Homo sapien theory says that for the first time, there's a cell created. And so how do you now bring this beginningless jiva, and you have a first time cell?
Well, the cell reacts with its environment. So in fact, it is a jiva.
Okay.
Or they're waiting, or the jivas are waiting for the evolution in order to be able to occupy the physical realm.
So what does that say about the jiva then? If the jiva is waiting?
To sleep.
Yeah, so this means the jiva has to be somewhere else. It's not necessarily stuck to a single cell. Pankaj?
I feel that the evolution is just the process. Jiva, whether it is single cell and a human being which is multi-cell, they have evolved. It is a process, and the human being will also further evolve into something else, maybe billions of years later. So the process continues, but the origin, the life, the cause, the primeval cause remains.
Yeah, good. So what Pankaj is saying is that the jiva was parked somewhere, right? This universe is not just the earth. It's a vast universe that you don't see. And the jiva isn't just the physical body, it's also the subtle body. And that subtle body, right, gets an appropriate physical body when the conditions are right. And earth happens to be a perfect condition where the jiva can look at itself and figure the truth out. So there's no contradiction. The monkeys does not contradict the jiva. The jiva takes on different bodies at different parts of the universe, right? Wherever they are, we don't know. It's beyond our perception. And in one life, there's the earth, and it just takes on a single-celled organism. Meenakshi?
Why are we trying to reconcile the two?
Because this person can say, on one hand, you have a first-time organism created. On the other hand, you say there's a beginningless jiva. How do you reconcile beginningless with a first-time cell? That's
maybe one of the theories is wrong, right? Maybe the one cell theory, that there was a one cell once first and then they became multi-cells, may not be true. There were all kinds of cells and all kinds of organisms, and in a single flash, the entire universe, the elephant and the ant, everyone was just created in that one moment. It was not like first you were an ant and then you grew up to become an elephant.
Yeah, so that's one. Yeah, so that's Advaita Vedanta. So that means all at once, right? The universe projected all at once. And there's also the evolution, right? The slow evolution, the linear evolution, where first the Big Bang, and then from the Big Bang, the nitrogen and all of the the particles started to come, and then from that came the first sun, and then the sun exploded. It formed new atoms, which then formed planets, and so on. So it doesn't matter, because the point is, whichever theory you throw, you need to be able to answer it, to reconcile it. So if we go with the single cell theory, still you need to be able to answer in the light of Vedanta. The point of this is just to show you how the intellect throws a question and then it starts a debate, right? Otherwise, if you say this elsewhere, I'm not interested, we're monkeys and that's it. I'm not satisfied with all these other theories. So the conversation stops. But an advanced intellect wants to know and wants to postulate different theories. So that's the point. So either way, what happened to the Mr. Curious called Valmiki? He went to Narada. What happened to Mr. Curious called Arjun? He went to Krishna. So in both cases, curiosity needs to be followed up by someone that's already, it's got the vision. So then the question is, why do I need a teacher? Because to solve a problem from individuality, you're operating at a paradigm shift that will not get you out of there. No matter how much you do within the paradigm of individuality or the dream character, you will always be stuck at that paradigm. So someone has to take you out completely. And for the right kind of teacher, Krishna says he has to be a tattva darshi. So what kind of a teacher can actually get you out of that paradigm shift? What is a tattva darshi? Well, darshi is the one who sees the tattva, sees the reality. So the right kind of teacher and the one who can help you, they have to see the reality first. And then from that understanding, they can properly show you and guide you to the right teaching. They have also removed their emotional loads, their own personal dislike for different groups like Christians, like Muslims, like Indians, white people, Asians, young and old. If this is not addressed, then what happens is, on one hand, the teacher is saying that I see the reality, but on the other hand, I don't see you because you are, you're white. If you're a Westerner, you cannot chant because this is a tradition for us Indians. If you are young, then I don't believe that you are worthy of being talked to because you're so inexperienced and you have a lot to learn. Just go there in the corner and don't talk to us. We are sort of like up there. And all of these things are an obstruction for the teacher being a good teacher. There's also teachers, which I've come across, who I had a question sincerely. The answer that I get is, no, go to the Gita chapter 3, verse 35. Wait a minute. So I'm like curious in this moment. I really am primed to learn. I honor your knowledge, your presence, and I want to know the answer. And you just told me to go to the Gita 3.25, as if I've not done that before, number one. And number two, that's not a real answer, because I want to hear what you have to say, not what the Gita has to say. And these teachers I've never stuck with because you just it's like I might as well go to AI and then, you know, ask the same question. So you don't want to be replaceable by AI, by the way. That's what AI does. What does 335 say? And then they tell you. So you have to be, you know, have to find your unique selling proposition. The teacher isn't someone who's loaded by hatred for different groups. They don't mind who shows up. As long as you have shown up, you have the right to know. This knowledge does not belong to anyone. That's like saying, the Indians saying, this knowledge is our Veda. Then the Westerner can say, well, your computers that you're using is our semiconductors, right? So the show will never end. But you can see, end of the day, everyone's just borrowing everyone else's material because it's a yajna. The whole universe is a yajna. Everyone's giving to everyone else. And thereby, what kind of exchanges have to happen between the teacher and the student? 3 kinds of exchanges according to the verse. The first is pranipatena, showing respect. There are 2 kinds of respects you develop for a teacher. The first kind is where you have respect on the basis of them wearing something or being in a assigned position. So the moment they have a title attached, you go and, right, you have pay respect to that. That's one kind of respect. The much cleaner kind of respect that you develop for a teacher is they actually help you change your life. And that takes time. It's slow. You go through the good times, through the bad times. Sometimes you're bored. Sometimes you're interested. You know them very well. You go through this whole journey. It's a slow unraveling of the journey. And end of the day, you discover, I'm being helped, right? My life is coming together because of their work. That's a different kind of respect you develop. And that's ideally the right kind of respect. So respect isn't basis of what clothes you're wearing or what title you have attached. That's one kind of, that's called cultural respect. If I go to a priest, I don't know anything about the priest. He never changed my life. He doesn't know my issues at home. He's not going to be there on the phone. He's not going to be doing classes with me. I have no connection to him, but I still pay respect to him. I come maybe on every Sunday, or I go to the temple, I listen to the discourse, right? So I pay respect. I even, you know, touch your feet, or it depends on the culture, but actually you have no real impact in my life. But then there's another kind of a teacher who isn't in a so-called authoritative position where it's well known that you are in this position. It's not very well known, but they actually change your life. They actually get in your mind slowly, slowly. They get to those parts which no other person was able to get. And somehow you allow that mind to start to reconfigure itself. And then you develop a different kind of respect for them. Therefore, the first is showing respect. The second is questioning. A teacher who is a tattvadarshi is not afraid of questions, encourages questions, doesn't recommend you to go to the Gita 3.35 when you ask a question, is glad to answer from their own experience. They may not have perfect sort of, you know, structure to it, because if it's a engagement, you cannot quite be completely structured, because an engagement requires a little bit spontaneity. But they still allow that spontaneous questioning to happen anytime, because this is what really makes you the discerning student, because you have a question, it's important, and it has to be answered. And the third one is seva. Seva is giving back. Now, what can you give back to someone who gave you back infinity? You can't give them back infinity because they already understand themselves as the infinite one. So what can you give back? The only thing you can really give back is not more gifts, because they're probably going to throw them out in the rubbish. You know, everyone's giving them gifts anyway. The only thing you can really give back to a teacher is your full assimilation of this knowledge, where you are transformed, where you get it, and you develop that love for Ishwara, love for the world, love for yourself, love and you know, release of this concern that I have to do something to be someone. Where the knowledge takes place for you, that's the best gift you could give back to a teacher. Not your money, not your your worship or your touching of the feet or any of that. It's not important. What is important is that you really are paying attention and you're curious and you want to help yourself.
I have a question. Is the teachers acquiring knowledge, is it based on prarabdha?
Yes. However, prarabdha never is on its own. It always comes with purushartha. So self-effort comes along with destiny. There are situations where someone can begin to teach, but they're not ready. And they discover soon that it's very hard to do this. And you don't care about fame or being seen. It's none of that. But there are still some samskaras that want some validation. And so they discover soon that they're not getting that validation that they deserve. So they have to, recede back. There's also cases where you start out as not a tattvadarshi. That means you don't know the full vision, but you think you do. So you're very convinced and you're very close to it. I mean, you're just so close, you might as well just call yourself enlightened. And as they begin to teach, because teaching itself requires a lot of self-reflection and challenge, it causes that teacher to look at their own stuff. And very soon they get it. And they don't even realize they got it. But it just happens so naturally, so like spontaneously, that it just totally evades you. And you continue teaching and you help the students. You can also have where the teacher is born in a, not a very educated environment. They don't have parents who are very religious. They don't have an environment that's very supportive. They don't have very loving parents. And they discover, I don't want to be like this. I want to change. And they put a lot of purushartha. That means their prarabdha was not favorable, but they put a lot of purushartha, not liking what they're seeing. They say, I don't want to be like this. This is not right.
What makes them to come to such questioning?
Yeah, I know where you're going with this. So everyone carries a little bit of that punyam, right, with them, which though you may not come with brilliant parents or religious parents, you come with an advantage because everyone comes with an advantage. And your advantage is to be a questioner, to ask questions. And initially start asking questions like, yeah, but this God, I don't like what he's up there, right? That it doesn't make sense. Now, other kids scold you. Now, of course, he's up there. What's wrong with he's up there? And so you end up being this weird kid out. But then as you come out of school, you can't let go of that samskara, which is to keep on questioning and eventually start asking the right kind of questions because people tell you things. People tell you about Buddha and nirvana and kevalam and moksha, and you're like, what is this? And you're a naturally curious person, so you go and research this and this, and then a big database of knowledge, and then you do something about it, and then you go to satsangs, and people say things, go to this teacher, and you try them out, and they start telling you about kundalini awakening the serpent in your back. And you say, yeah, this, I don't resonate with this. Is there anything else? Or go to this person who talks about knowledge. And then you just click. Wow, that's what I've been looking for. Okay? So everyone is given some advantage in life. Whether you want to call that prarabdha or luck factor or previous life, conditioning, whatever it is, you eventually come to the stage where you're asking the highest forms of questions. So your prarabdha karma is always being changed by your own actions. So there's no such thing as set destiny. Destiny is sculpted and molded based on the choices that you make every day.
I have a question which is nagging me for quite some time, since last class actually. You said we are discussing who's the doer. Is it me? I don't exist. Is it Brahman? Brahman is Akarta and Abhokta. Is it Ishwar? Is it Maya? So who's doing? There can be only two things, Jeev and Ishwar, or Jeev and Brahman. But if Jeev is not doing anything, Brahman is a karta and a bhokta, then who's doing everything in this universe?
Okay, so I'll give you a simple analogy and then we'll connect it to your question. So in the dream, you are faced before the jury and the judge. You've committed a murder and you're sentenced to death. You're worried. Uh-oh. And at once you wake up and you realize that death was not belonging to me. The jury and the judge was not talking to me. The murderer was not me. In fact, it was dependent upon me, but I was never the murderer. The jury and the judge was dependent upon my presence, but I was never the jury and the judge. And so you say then, who was doing that stuff in the dream? You say, I wasn't, but from me arose the dream, right? I was the supplier, I was the content, I was the material from which the dream arose. But also, then you say, well, who is the doer? Well, I do have a power for the dream to come. That's called the power of the mind. And my power of the mind depends upon me, my conscious awareness. And my power of the mind creates the world of people who are doing according to their karma, according to their, because you've been dreaming this dream for a long time, suppose. So every person in the dream will have a story attached to them, and that's how they will see themselves. So the doer thereby is the person in connection with the power. I don't do. So the power we call Maya, and the Maya supplies the person neurons to think, supplies them the body to move, the arms to punch or to, do a namaskara. So all of this is supplied by this power. And then what's also supplied is the free will, the ability to say, I'm going to give you a namaskara or I'm going to do this, right? That's the free will. So thereby, who's the doer? The doer is the jiva together with Maya.
But if we believe in the concept of Maya, that means instead of Jeev and Ishwar, Jeev and Brahman, there is a third being.
No.
It is beyond non-dualism.
No, see, the way to look at this is the ocean. Look at the ocean as Ishwara, right? And ocean is just a bunch of different mini beings. So the ocean is made of mini beings. So all of the beings constitute the ocean. Not only the present beings, but also the beings of the past, the present, and all those beings that are yet to come in the future. All of that is within the ocean. So Ishwara isn't just what you see right now. Ishwara is also all the things that have happened in the past and what is yet to happen in the future. Otherwise, if you just look at this world and you call this Ishwara, that's not called Ishwara, that's called Jagat, the universe.
Yeah.
Okay. So there's only Ishwara here, and the truth of that Ishwara, like the truth of that ocean, is the water. So there's no second being or third being. There's only one being from whom apparently arises Ishwara, which you call the second being, or third being, which you call the jiva. How many beings are there in the dream? There's many beings, right? There's, you, there's your friend, there's a tree, there's an insect. So there's many beings from the standpoint of the dream. And then in the dream, you also look up and you say, who created this dream? And then you say, the creator. And this creator is Ishwara. So you, the waker, are Ishwara in reference to those in the dream. They call you Ishwara. They call you God. And they say, this God is creating all of this. And yeah, he is. But it's not you, the waker, who's creating it. It's your power that's creating all of this. Now, when you count all of those characters inside your dream, what do they all add up to? They all add up onto you. There's no actual independent person in the dream, or two independent people. They're all just you, because you're pervading all of that. every person, every word, every sound, every leaf, you're pervading all of that. So there's no multiple people or multiple things in the dream. Only from the standpoint of the dream, it looks like there's many things. But from the standpoint of your mind, the power which projects all of that, there's only mind. But even that mind dissolves in deep sleep. And you remain still you, right? The one from whom arises the mind in the next couple of hours. That's called another dream world. And then again, that power of Maya resolves into you. So this means even Maya depends upon you, but you do not depend upon Maya. So all this time, it was just you manifesting mini versions of yourself in the form of Pankaj, who's asking another mini version of yourself in the form of Andre. And then one of them says to you, just re-look at the reality for a little bit, and you will come to see that there's only one being here who, you know, by his amazing capacity, manifests all of us for a time being, and have a great time. Appreciate your glory. Look around and just say, oh, great. That's what my power is doing. Fantastic. But it doesn't get removed when you want it. Even though you can't put the effort into it, it gets removed ultimately by Ishwara's grace. For instance, Newton, did he just decide one fine day that he's going to come to an epiphany and kind of ascertain that there is a force of gravity? Did he actually wake up and say, today, I'm going to sit under that tree, which I was sitting for a long time, and today something magical is going to happen? Is that what Newton did? No. If there's one thing that Newton did, that's called Purushartha, going back to Krishnamurti's question. If there's one thing that he did, he got associated to the right forms of knowledge, physics. And by the constant association to that, it primed his mind to become a lot more sensitive to realities all around him. That somebody else who was not involved in physics simply could not have that same epiphany because they were not having the right frameworks in their mind to even come to that conclusion. Thereby, one fine day, he sits under a tree and his mind just happens to be primed in that moment. That's called Ishwara's grace. And he goes, a new recognition of what is took place. And then he called it gravity. So now, can you say a Westerner, one character called the Westerner, discovered gravity? And it's not Indian, it's only Westerner. No, because the dream, the maker of the dream, is pervading the Newton, pervading the Rishi, pervading Krishna, pervading Aristotle, pervading all of us, and manifesting these beings right now, which are speaking to each other. This is your power doing right now. Your power is creating many beings in this universe, and you are one of them. And why is your life different from mine? Because everyone's assigned a certain kind of a storyline, and that storyline you're just playing along in this life, which is okay. Let it play. But if there's one thing that's given to all of us, is the same thing that happened to Newton. By repetition and exposure to this knowledge, as Lorena said, it's called nididhyasanam, one day Ishwara graces me a complete, total recognition of what is. And that recognition of what is means that now I can just let go of having to understand more forms. Because no matter what form I do come to see, it will always have a simple Satya-Mithya relationship. If I look into any form, what is the form composed of? It's made of names within names within names. If I look at your body, for example, where can I find your body in your body? Like, show me body. Is your arm your body? Is the finger your body? Is the head your body? No. Is your heart your body? In other words, look at this. Non-bodies create a body. Is your heart a body? No. Well, heart plus no body arm plus no body brain plus no body lung equals body, which we call then a body. So look at anything else in this world. A tree. No tree plus no tree plus no tree, that's called roots, plus no tree leaf plus no tree veins equals tree. And then you see, this is kind of an amazing magic of Maya. It creates something which is not made of that thing which I call it. I call it a tree, and yet it's not made of tree. It's made of just small no trees plus no trees plus no trees equals tree. So all of this, you say, so this is how all forms are put together, and all forms are very well organized and keep on being organized to form the spectacular universe, which we call Jagat. And this universe, if you look any object, you cannot find the final building block in anything. But if there's one thing you can for sure discover, is that it is forms within forms within forms within forms. And what you ultimately come to through an analysis is they come to reduce to the smallest of the smallest particles, which themselves become very fuzzy. It's no longer even tangible particles anymore, but it's just merely concepts. Concepts from which comes the smallest particle, and the smallest particle rearranges itself to form the next larger assembly of mithya called an atom. Atom rearranges to form a larger assembly called molecule, and eventually two molecules come together and you have water. And that concept itself resolves into the final reality, which is consciousness. Just like in your dream, the entire dream is made of nothing but knowledge, concepts of your mind. It's physical, it's tangible, it has weight, but it's nothing but your knowledge. So your knowledge manifests as heavy objects. Your knowledge of the mind manifests, and memories manifest in a form of people, in a form of glasses, in a form of air that you're breathing. And it makes it so convincing, and yet the whole thing is just your intelligence doing all of this in this moment. Even while you're writing this down and thinking and shaking your head, it is still this intelligence in the form of this person doing that by the help of this material. So what is Ishwara? Ishwara is both the sculptor, which we call efficient cause or nimitta karanam, and the material, which is like the stone or the upadana karanam. Very simple way to understand. Imagine you have a big block of stone and it's boundless. There's no ending. One big block of marble. No ending. It's everywhere. You know what Ishwara does? Look at this. Amazing magic. Ishwara, being a sculptor, the nimitta karanam, starts to take one frame of the entire universe. It's called marble, right? And starts to chisel it. And it creates one entire frame, it chisels and creates Andre like this, one frame. And it creates that tree there. It creates you right now listening. And Ishwara is happy. Oh, great work. Now let me chisel another frame, and then another frame like this. And then you have all these frames together, put together, and from your standpoint, it's like this fast forward motion of the movie, and you're so immersed in it. And yet, Ishwara, frame by frame, is chiseling every single frame of the universe according to the prarabdha karma of every single individual. That's how they will be chiseled. And by this, you get convinced, wow, this is all one big show that's happening. There's motion, there is emotion, there's energy, there's fireworks. So Ishwara, thus being the efficient and the material cause, that efficient material cause is what we call your own power, your Maya Shakti. And that Maya Shakti, again, it has no reality apart from awareness. Because I'll explain how. Show me how I can be free of this Maya Shakti. Simple. What do we say that Maya Shakti or all knowledge and power is? What do we say it? So all knowledge, all power manifests as this entire world. Can you be without a thought? I mean, can you meditate and there's no thoughts? Yeah, right, simple. No, you meditate, right? You meditate, there's no thoughts at all. And then a thought comes, oh, I've got to clean up my house, right? So that's a thought. A thought has arisen. So that thought is nothing but alpajna, alpa shakti. It's a small thought. It's a small form. That's a small intelligence. So if you can be without small intelligence, then what to say of Brahman? It's the same idea. Because Ishwara is sarvajna sarva shakti, all knowledge, all power. It doesn't matter whether it's small knowledge or total knowledge, it is still knowledge. So if I, as awareness, can be without a thought, When the thought goes away, I don't go away. I'm still there waiting. I'm the presence in whom the thought arises. The thought is sustained and the thought goes away. I'm the knower, the sakshi of that thought. So if that thought, that concept, that knowledge, alpa shakti, can come, that and alpajna can come in my mind and go away and I remain, then as below, so above. Like that, one being, Brahman, equally the same as awareness. In me arises this entire universe. By my power, when the universe resolves, I remain exactly I am. Nothing changes. So this is what is communicated in verse 35, where, extending this inquiry, the knowledge cannot be forgotten. Once you gain this, it cannot be forgotten. Why? Let's see. Yajnatva napunar moham evam yasyasi pandava yena bhutan yasheshena drakshasyat manyato mayi.
Gaining this knowledge, which was taught by them, Pandava, Arjuna, you will not again be deluded in this manner, and by this knowledge you will see all things, all beings in yourself and in me.
So why is this knowledge that we have spoken about unique? It cannot be forgotten. See, consciousness is not dependent on the functions of your mind. Functions of the mind are dependent on consciousness, but it's not the other way around. And once you understand, once you've used this instrument to see that this instrument is lit up by consciousness, then from that moment on, whatever happens to this instrument, it no longer affects you because you've used the instrument for the right reasons. And you've now seen that the instrument is an instrument and I am independent of the instrument. So this means you've come to see that this light of awareness is your final truth. And whether it's lighting up a mind which is, filled with dementia and, disease, or a healthy mind, hopefully, it still doesn't touch you. When the knowledge takes place, even dharma and adharma no longer touches you, because dharma and adharma belongs to the person. And it means that no matter whether you do good deeds or bad deeds, when I say the word you here, your body and mind, it doesn't come onto your account anymore because you have no account. The account is nothing but Brahman here. There's no such thing as causal body or account or samskara. It's only one reality here. So, but at the same time, it doesn't mean that the jiva mukta starts to do adharmic acts. The reason is because to come to that stage, you have cleaned up your mind decently well, right? It's not a journey overnight. It takes some time, it takes some struggle. And to go through that struggle, you develop humility. And that humility will help you to be a very decent person, even as a wise person. Even if you do the best of the best in this world, there's no account for you. Even if you commit, murderers and everything, it still doesn't go onto you. So what knowledge takes place? The first is you see that there is an incidental nature, that which is seen, that which is heard. That means objects which are objectified. We call this in Sanskrit tapasta lakshana, your incidental attributes. For instance, do you have to wait for a cell in the body to be aware? No, you're aware irrespective of the cells coming and going. So this means the cell is an incidental nature. It is seen. It doesn't, you're not dependent on the cell to be aware. Same thing for when you were born, your body, you cannot see for the first 6 months, but you still were. Right? Your awareness was not negated because your senses were not working. You was fully there, just the senses were not working. So this means even I do not need the senses to exist as a conscious being. It was just -1 data point of visuals. But just because it's one minus data point does not negate me as the awareful being. Okay. Now, what about your thoughts? Your thoughts are also your incidental nature because if one thought was your intrinsic nature, who you were, then that thought will be with you all the time. But no thought from the past ever sticks onto you. If drishya was never stuck onto me, that which was seen, now, then no thought or no drishya will ever be stuck to me in the future. So therefore, the first understanding of this knowledge is incidental attribute. What is incidental attribute? That which is seen. That's why we call it the drishya, seen. In Sanskrit, another name for this is tatastha lakshana. The second understanding is what we call svarupa lakshana. Svarupa lakshana is your intrinsic attributes, that which is intrinsic to you, to who you are. Another name for this is drik, the seer. This is something that you cannot get rid of because it is who you are. You cannot get rid of your awareness, because if you try to get rid of it and you say, I got rid of my awareness, there's still a seer of that attempt who remains. Thereby, the question that comes is, how many of these awarenesses are there? Are there many awarenesses? Is there a personal awareness? Is there two awarenesses? No, there's only one awareness. But now the logical question comes, how do you show me that? How do you show that there's only one awareness? Would someone like to try this?
To prove that otherwise you would have to be able to show that your awareness or my awareness has an attribute that's different from each other.
Good, good. And to what would the attribute belong to? It would only have to be, right, to either your body or your mind, right? So now, if an attribute, if your consciousness was an attribute of your body and the mind, then that would mean, since the body and the mind is constantly undergoing change, because it's your incidental nature, then you would not experience yourself as a continuous entity. You would have like jolts of existence. One existence is like this, and then another existence is completely different without any connection to the prior existence. But that is not your experience. You experience yourself as one streaming conscious being in the presence of whom your incidental nature, called your body and mind, is coming and going and modifying and changing. So thereby, there's only one consciousness. And this consciousness, from that arises the entire universe. Not from some different consciousness, because it's all pervading. It's one all-pervading awareness, which is pervading your mind, my mind, everyone's mind, Krishna's mind, the Lord's mind. There's no mind, insect's mind. There's no mind that is outside of this, of this reality. Now, one thing that happens, and then we'll close, is that there is this danger of objectifying this consciousness. So now, as I'm speaking to you and I say your intrinsic nature, who you are, you cannot get rid of it because it's intrinsic to you. For example, can you get rid of sweetness from the sugar? No. So sugar, sweetness is intrinsic to the sugar. So you cannot separate the two. That's how it is. So in that same way, you cannot separate awareness from who you are because it is who you are. So now, when I say the word awareness, people then tend to objectify this and try to, owing to their past attempts to always visualize things, they try to kind of create this thing that is apart from the mind and apart from my body. And so they want to look for it somewhere else. But what Vedanta says is that everything that exists, like in the dream, there is no place that is one object in the dream that's away from you, the dreamer. So in that same way, there's no one thing, even the thinker of this thought right now, there's not one thing that is away from that Maya Shakti. And Maya Shakti is never away from consciousness. And that consciousness is always known to you as I am, I am, I am. So in this way, Krishna closes the verse, and he then says a very profound statement. Once the knowledge dawns, your buddhi will see all beings in the self and me. This word "and" is very important, not only in the self, but also me. But also one more thing you have to add here. Not only will your buddhi see other beings, but it will also see itself. Do not exclude yourself. Remember the 10th story. This is a common thing in Vedanta. You stop and you say, all beings are in me. For how many years has this word "me" been referred to as just the body and the mind? Forever, backwards. So now when you say all this is appearing in me, what's the mind in the background doing? Owing to years and years of conditioning, it's most likely saying, oh, this is in my ego. All this is in my mind. So now Krishna then cancels that out and he says, and me Ishwara. Therefore, do not forget Ishwara. It is analogous to saying the wave, enlightened wave, the right kind of wave says, both the ocean and I, the wave, the truth of both is the water. The wave doesn't just say the truth of me is the water. The wave says the truth of me, the wave, and the ocean is the water. Do not exclude Ishwara, because Ishwara is the whole thing here. Otherwise, if I'm just saying all this is in me, all this is in me, yeah, but what about the objects that I'm looking at right now? Thereby, you have to include both. So that makes the inquiry complete. And then the next verse, now the question is, who is eligible for this knowledge? Next week. Om Purnamadav Purnamidam Purnat Purnamudachyate Purnasya Purnamadaya Purnam Eva Avashishyate. Om Shanti Shanti Shanti.